All right, guys, I hope everyone is doing great today. I had a request for a short video on file referencing and the difference between relative and absolute links. So before I start, I want to make sure one thing is really, really clear. This works exactly the same for images, so the image source, the href link source, the CSS reference style file, any scripts or any other reference files. Anything that you are referencing outside of your original HTML file, this applies to. So I have a couple things here. So I have this lovely blank HTML page, and then over here I have what it looks like in the browser. I'm using Chrome today. And so you'll see here's my file, and then here's what it looks like. And so if I start here and I'm just going to insert a picture, I know this won't pass validation. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. So in this case, I'm referencing an image called george.gif, and if I look at the file, here's my folder, and in my folder I have george.gif, and it's right beside index.html, index.html being the file that is referencing George. So in this case, we're going to be talking about index.html, but it doesn't matter what your file name or what your file is. You could be using contact.htm, and it would apply exactly the same way. But for now, I'm going to reference index. I just want to make sure that you're not being confused in thinking that that only applies to index.html. This applies to all web pages in the same way. So index.html is here, george.gif is here. Relative to each other, there's no other folders. So index says call George, and it just calls george.gif. Okay, it's not where it is to index, it's reference to where it is from the page that's calling it. In this case, happens to be index. So if I save this and then go back to our file, you can see there's the file, there's the image, shows up no problem. So you'll also see that I have the image cats, okay? And so if I do the same thing, only in this case I use cats.jpg, file save, you'll see that that won't work. Oh, you'll see it won't work. Oh, cats, sorry. This is a critical thing that happens to the best of us. It has to be exactly the same, file cats. So I'm going to go back, refresh, there it is. So there's cats. Now, again, it's referenced exactly the same, but then if I move cats into index, there's into images, I created another folder called images, and now cats is in there. If I refresh it, cats doesn't work anymore, because relative to the HTML file, cats is not beside it. Cats is now in the images folder. So in order for cats to be visible, we have to go images, cats, save, and then when we go back, this will work. Perfect. Now, hopefully this all makes sense to you and this feels very repetitive, and that's what I'm hoping. I want to make sure that we understand relative before we jump into absolute. So that is relative. Absolute is slightly different, and this is where I think a lot of people are getting hung up, is on the absolute. So I'm just going to add another one here, and I'm going to go onto the internet and I'm going to find a picture, and this is a picture on a web page, and I want it on my web page. I wouldn't recommend doing this on a professional website for copyright reasons, but obviously we're learning here. So I'm going to copy the image address. I right-clicked on the image and I went copy image address. If I open a new tab and paste that image address, you'll see this is an absolute, right? Regardless of where index.html is, this image will always be in the same place. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to put this in here. Okay. File save. And then I go back here and I refresh. Okay, so now it's there. So here's the trick. if I create a new folder and call it pages, and within pages, I drop index.html. Now, first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to change. This is an absolute file here. I'm just going to have to change where it is. That's opening. Okay, now you'll see it opens my page. This is the same page. This one works because it's an absolute link, and these two don't. Because when index references George, it's now no longer in the same folder. And when it references cats, it's no longer, it would be looking for an images folder here and a cats folder and a cats file within it. So it actually doesn't work anymore because it's not relative to where index is anymore. So this is one of the reasons why people want to use a relative link, is because it, or why people want to try and use an absolute link, because they can move their pages and they think it'll just follow. I'm going to move it back and go back. All right, so now our stuff's all working again. And I'm going to show you the problems with using an absolute link. So I'm going to go back to my file here. Actually, I'm going to use the cats file, and I'm going to use an absolute location for the cats file. And I've actually already opened it. And you'll see I opened it in the browser. Just like this one, I opened just the image. It's not on a web page, it's just the image. The browser's only displaying the image. So I've done the same thing with cats. And you'll see here that this is my file location of the file on my computer. And if I look at the file and just go properties, then it tells me where that location is. I can look it up there. That's how I got it. I dropped it in there. And then if I go and copy that, right, I'm going to save it, file save, and I'm going to refresh, and that works. Now, if I now move index, that cat's image will keep working no matter where I move index.html. But there's a catch. If I send this index.html file to you and I send the cats file, it's telling me the absolute location. So it says file is located on the C drive, in the folder users, in the folder Lily A, in the folder documents, in the folder Durham, in the folder example, in the folder images, and the file is cats. Probably the user Lily A doesn't even exist on your folder, on your drive, let alone all of these other ones. So on your computer, even if you have the file cats on your computer, you probably don't have all those subfolders that it exists within. If we look at this one here, which is the one that was pulled from the internet, it gives you the HTTPS, which you have to have if you're using an absolute reference from the internet, as opposed to file, which is an absolute reference on your computer. Okay, and then the website, and then the files on the server of that website. So the website is laughingsquid.com, then it's in WP content, then it's in the folder upload, then it's in the folder 2013, then it's in the folder 07, then it's the name of the file. So this is still just a location on a server, as opposed to this being a location on your computer. Using a location on your computer means that's going to work, but it's only going to work while you're accessing the index.html file on your computer. As soon as you access it from anywhere else, it's not going to work anymore. So even though we say it's absolute, remembering that if you're using that file, it's absolute only to your computer. So even when I open up your assignment, if you have an absolute file that is referencing a location on your computer, I can't see it, and I'm going to get that little broken picture image. So you might say, well, then what's the point of the absolute file? The absolute is great. There are times where it's very, very beneficial. There are times when it's not so beneficial. If you're creating an entire website where things are referenced to each other within that file structure, if you then move that file structure, then your website will stay intact even if you change it to a different directory. If you are using absolute links, that is not the case, because in that case, where the files actually are on the server have changed, and that will break every single link because it's not based on where the index.html or the referencing HTML page is. It's based on where all of those things are in the server. A great example is when we run into broken links in this course and I have to go back and fix them. And it's because on that server, the location of that article or that education resource moved on the server, which happens all the time. And because that file moved, that absolute link is broken. So a URL is an absolute link, and it is really the only absolute link that you should be using is a URL. So a www.lillianchumley.ca/images. That is an absolute HTML URL, and that is okay to be using, but you shouldn't be using any that are not that. When we get into Bootstrap in a couple of weeks, you guys are gonna love that a whole bunch. But some of the things that we reference actually are absolute URLs from the Bootstrap. So we actually have CSS files that we're gonna link to that are on the Bootstrap website, and those are absolute. Because they know people are looking to that file, they make updates to that file and they don't change the location of it. So that one's a pretty safe, but being aware if that location ever went away, so would that referenced file. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that you guys have figured all of this out. If you still have other questions, don't hesitate to ask, and I'm happy to clarify some more.